With the NBA season coming to a close, it seems like as good of a time as ever to discuss the MVP race. And this one's a real doozy because usually it's just one or two standout players. But in this case, there's three guys that have legitimate arguments, and then there's some more that have slightly lesser arguments as well. The three biggest threats to win the award are Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the honorable mentions, I would say, are Jayson Tatum and Luka Doncic. In the case of Doncic, there's just not been enough team success for him to be a real threat. And Tatum has been exceptional this year, but there has just been such statistical filling up the stat sheet in the case of the three players we're going to focus more on that his numbers just don't hold up quite as nicely. To start off, we're going to look at Giannis's stats, and as you can see, he is just absolutely filling up the stat sheet as he's 2 points shy of leading the league in scoring. He does lead the league in rebounds, and then 6 assists is definitely nothing to scoff at. So all of that is great. And the true shooting is elite, but what really stands out to me is his defense. As though he has the worst defensive Raptor out of the three, I think there's a real argument that he's actually the best defender. And what really is an argument for that is the fact that the Bucks are second in defensive rating, which is not all on Giannis. They do have Drew Holiday, who is maybe the best perimeter defender, and then they have Brook Lopez, who is an exceptional defender inside. So he does have some help, but Giannis is really leading the charge defensively, and he allows them to do so much of what they want to do on defense because he can switch onto anybody. He's great off the ball. He's great as a primary defender. So there's really nothing he lacks defensively. Additionally, the Bucks do have the best record in the NBA, and that's pretty major because historically a lot of the time the MVP award would just be going to the best player on the best team, which as it stands now is Giannis. But what doesn't work in his favor is the fact he's played the least amount of games out of the three real contenders for MVP. And in addition to that, Vegas is not really sold on him because they give him the third worst odds, or rather, they give him the worst odds out of the three contenders. So they're not sold on it just being the best player on the best team. Moving to Embiid, he leads the league in points. He's right there with rebounds. He's not too much of an assist person, but that's in large part due to Harden being the primary ball handler, and then Tyrese Maxey also has a lot of the originating of the offense as well. He has even better true shooting than Giannis does, and the defensive Raptor is really a fan of his, which I do take with a grain of salt. I think it's an imperfect measure, as I was alluding to with Giannis, but it is definitely something. The defensive rating of the 76ers is also really good, which is, again, something I pay attention to for centers more than any other position because they dictate the most of how the team defense does. And when you look at the lineup for the 76ers, there's PJ Tucker, who's a really good defender. And then there's also Daniel House, who is also a really good defender. But Maxey's not great, and Harden is also not good. So that's really a sign that the defensive success is really on Embiid and the few other good defenders they have on their team. The closest thing to a real knock you can have on Embiid is the fact that the 76ers just have the fourth best record in the NBA, but that's still clearly a good enough record for them to be squarely in the mix and for Embiid to not be degraded too much. And lastly, we have the reigning and defending back to back MVP of the league, Nikola Jokic, who is the biggest stat stuffer there is. And I don't say that in a bad way at all. I mean that in that he's an exceptional scorer, a great rebounder, and a top five assist guy as well. And in addition to that, he also leads the league in true shooting percentage. So it's really hard to go wrong with Nikola Jokic. He can do it all, and he can do it all at an exceptional level. His defensive raptor is great, but I think that's a little bit misleading because he hasn't helped lead Denver to great success defensively. And it's not like Denver is profoundly worse in their supporting cast defensively than the Bucks or 76ers have, because Aaron Gordon is an exceptional defender as well, and he can really do it as a primary defender. He can do it off ball. He's great at switching, so he does have some help. And though Jamal Murray is not known for being a good defender, he's also not the worst defender. And that's kind of how it is with the rest of their team. Bruce Brown is a very good defender as well, and he plays quite often. So there is some pushback you can have, and that's kind of the mark of this MVP race as a whole. There's very few things you can nitpick against, but every player has that one thing that just isn't as great as the other contenders have. And I think with Jokic, the biggest advantage he has, aside from his stats, is just the fact that he is so continually available. He's played the most games by far out of these three, and it's not like he's giving you, 75% energy in those games. This may be a bit anticlimactic, but in the end, I think I'm going to give it to Nikola Jokic because, to put it bluntly, if you combine his points and assist with the assist just counting for 2 points, he tallies the most total points for his team. And the fact he's doing that on otherworldly true shooting percentage and good defense. I'm not going to say it's great, even though his defensive raptor would suggest that. I think he's good defensively, which is kind of wild to me that some people still hold it against him that he's a quote unquote bad defender. He's not a bad defender at this point. He is very heady and he knows exactly where to be for just about any situation. So give me Jokic because if you take him away from the Nuggets, I don't think that team has a lot of bite to them. And though that's true for Embiid and Giannis as well, it's just Jokic is carrying the load so much so as both a scorer and a playmaker that Embiid and Giannis, though they do play make very well in when they do, they're not doing it quite as often as Jokic is, and I think that really does matter, especially because we're kind of splitting hairs here with just how good all three of these players are. The last thing I'd say is I would rank Giannis ahead of Embiid, but that feels like I'm doing Embiid dirty by saying I would rank him third out of these. But just know it's a race that you could really argue just about any order for. So I'm not saying that with a stern conviction by any stretch. Those are my thoughts on the MVP race. Be sure to let me know what yours are, and also please be sure to subscribe.